Welcome to VLearn Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 2 of Social Problems in India and the topic is Approaches and Paradigms. Topics to be covered are Introduction, Early Approaches, Contemporary Approaches, Inadequacies of these approaches, Contemporary Social Reality, that is Dysfunctional Aspect, Paradigms of Transformation in Social Problems, and the last one is limitations of the state intervention. Now come to the first topic, that is societies which experience slow process of transformation find little difficulties in adjusting to changed conditions. By and large, the slow process of social transformation is visible in the tribal and agrarian structures, whereas it is most rapid in the urban industrial social structure, characterized by cities, high technology, modern production, consumerisms, rapid means of transportation and communication, migration, mobility, anonymity, secondary groups, and impersonal relationship. The strains caused by the rapidity of social transformation and even a partial inability on the part of the society to recast its structural frame in accordance with the changed condition either strengthen the existing challenge of the social order or generate new tensions of problems. Early approaches. There were several exercises either in the form of beliefs and superstitions or in the form of serious and systematic understanding of the problems of famine, epidemics and crimes. For the purpose of understanding, they may be classified as follows: beliefs and superstitions, classical approaches, and the last one is physical constitutional approach. Come to the first point, that is beliefs and superstitions. Starting from the primitive phase of human life till today, man has been facing famine, scarcity, epidemic, violence, homicide and crimes. These problems in many societies in the early periods or in some segments of human society even today are considered to be more outcome of the influence of spirits, ghosts and witches. The classical approach. Starting from the 18th century, some attempts were made to understand crimes in a more systematic manner. Kessler, Beccaria, and Italian and Germany Betham and Englishmen were the pioneers who did serious exercise to explain the questions of crime as a social problem. Their formulations are known as the classical theory or approach, which stressed on the hedonistic or the pleasure-seeking nature of man, which motivate them to violate accepted social norms and thus resulting in crimes. Physical constitutional trait. Italian viewed crime is relation to physical constitutional traits. Therefore, this approach is known as physical constitutional approach or the Italian school of theory of crime, since he tried to verify his assumptions by empirical methods, and this is also known as the positivist approach to the explanation of crimes. Critical review. Critical review of these approaches reveal their limitations, which are as follows. The first approach was based only on superstition and ignorance. The latter two approaches are only of historical importance today. They are not based on scientific analysis of crimes. The focus of the classical and the physical constitutional approaches is on individuals, and they have not kept in view the social, economic and cultural factors. Contemporary approaches. The distinct intellectual trends were visible during this century in the field of social sciences. In the first trend, the major emphasis was on the centrality of social order, which major components of preservations, solidarity, cohesion, and integration. In the second trend, the central theme was social dynamics with its components of contradictions and conflict. The functional approach views society as a system, that is, as a set of interconnected parts which together form a whole. The basic unit of analysis in society and its various parts are understood in terms of their relationship to the whole. Thus, social institutions such as family and religions are analyzed by functionalists as a part of the social system rather than isolated units. As parts, they contribute to the integration and maintenance of the system as a whole. The functional prerequisites. In this approach, certain functional prerequisites are identified. They are considered to strengthen the processes of integration, adaptation, and maintenance and to help in the smooth functioning of society. The major prerequisites are as follows: role differentiations, communication, normative regulations, socializations, and the last one is social control. The concept of role. The role are assigned to individuals on the basis of their personal motivations and the social needs. People performing on the type of role belongs to one position. Social facts and anomy. The society is a itself emergent reality which is out of and above the individuals. The members of a society are constrained by social facts which are defined by Durkheim as ways of acting, thinking, and feeling. Social order and the social consequences. Thus, socialization and social control is inculcate the spirit of value consensus and help in the maintenance of the order. According to Parsons, adaptation, goal attainment, integration, and pattern maintenance are the functional prerequisites. These are essentials, preconditions for the survival of society, and it may be summed up that social problems are indicated by the lack of order and value consensus, which are the result of the lack of socialization, social control, adaptation, goal attainment, and pattern maintenance. The social dysfunction, anomy, and structure. The social problems have both objective and subjective aspects. They have been termed as manifest and latent respectively by Merton. Now, it is essential to study not only manifest social problems which are clearly identified in society, but also latent social problems which refer to conditions that are also at odds with current interests and values but are not generally recognized as being so. A social dysfunction is a specific inadequacy of a particular part of the system for meeting a functional requirement. This dysfunction provides a set of consequences which interfere with the requirements of functions in a social system. The Marxist approach. Marx begins with the simple observation that in order to survive, man must produce food and material objects. In doing so, he enters into relationship with other men. From the simple herding stage to the complex industrial stage, production is a social enterprise. Contradictions involve the exploitation of the poor by the rich. For example, in the feudal society, lords exploited their serfs. In capitalist system, capitalists exploit their workers. Inequality. According to Marx, inequality occurs in all societies because of unequal distribution of means of production. Second is poverty. Poverty is capitalized society, according to Marx, can only be understood in terms of system of inequality generated by the capitalist economy. Wealth is concentrated in the hands of those who own the means of production. Gandhian approach related to social problems. There were several social problems of long and short ranges faced by Indian society, such as low position of women, untouchability, poverty, illiteracy, colonial education, village reconstruction, and day-to-day political problems. Means and end. Gandhian approach to social problems regard means and ends as parts of a whole which has transcendental reference. Unlike Marx, who placed emphasis on ends, Gandhi stood steadfastly for a non-exploitative social order, for he understood well that violence is built into an exploitative system. Gandhi's major goal in life was to achieve Swaraj for India. His socio-political philosophy was based on truth, non-violence, and the unity of means and end. The new economic system, Gandhi said, you cannot build a non-violent society on factory civilization, but it can be built on self-contained villages. The violence that prevails today has its roots mainly in economic factors, and the only remedy for it lies in doing away with concentration of wealth in the society. In equality, Gandhian approach envisages that the goal of economic equality is equality of wages for an honest day's work, but it that of a lawyer, a doctor, and teacher, or a scavenger. It requires much advanced training to reach that state of equality. So, economic quality of Gandhian conceptions does not mean that everybody would literally have the same amount or would possess an equal amount of worldly goods. It is possible to reduce the difference between the rich and the people, the caste system, and the untouchability. Arrogations of superior status by any of the Varna over another is the denial of human dignity, and particularly so in the case of the section of society which was considered untouchable in an unjust manner. Construction programs. Gandhi coined a new term known as Harijan for the so-called untouchable, besides removal of untouchability and the development of khadi. Gandhian constructive program consisted of communal unity, prohibition, village sanitations, health and hygiene, basic education, adult education and literacy, uplift of women, spread of Hindustani, work for economic equality, service of the aboriginals, and organization of students, peasants and laborers. The communication order aimed in Gandhian approach depend upon a life on non-exploitative, which was in consequence with the allevance vows advocated by Gandhi. The functional Marxian and the Gandhian approaches have tried to understand social problems from their own perspective. No approach can be regarded as final, and on the other hand, Karl Marx was more concerned with historical development of human society in problems generated by industrialization and capitalism, such as alienations, exploitation of men by men, dehumanization, and inhuman working condition in the emerging industrial and urban centers. Gandhi was primarily concerned with the problems of Indian society, such as colonialisms, imperialist exploitations, untouchability, status of women, alcoholisms, weakening of rural communities, and the destruction of cottage industries. Critical review of the functional approach. The functional approach treats an effect as a cause. It explains that parts of a system exist because of their beneficial consequences for the system as a whole. Further, it gives a deterministic view of human action because human behavior has been portrayed as determined by the system. Man is pictured as an automation program directed and controlled by the system. Critique of the Marxist approach. In the first, the deterministic factor in social system, whereas in the second, it is the mode of production and economy. The social inequality and exploitation remained in the communist states also. The communist states were characterized by dictatorship, police states, inefficiency and corruption. The middle class would disappear and there would be only two classes, that is capitalist and working class. But a reverse process is visible whereby increasing number of affluent manual workers were entering in middle stratum and becoming middle class. A middle mass society is emerging where the mass of the population is middle rather than the working class. This process is visible in both capitalist and communist societies. Now, review of Gandhian approach. Gandhian approach offers a critique of the existing order, propounds certain basic elements of a new society, and provides a methodology for solving social problems. Critics have argued that Gandhian approach lacks originality and is a combination of the traditional Indian thinking, welfare policies, and liberalisms. It is idealistic and divorced from the rough nature of the social reality and ideal state based on truth and non-violence with practice of austerity, sacrifice and moral standards seems to be autopaid. Contemporary social reality, dysfunctional aspect. In all societies, crime, delinquencies, alcoholism, drug addiction, prostitution, poverty, and socio-economic inequality are regarded as dysfunctional. In contemporary society, there are several dysfunctional activities and conditions which operate at global, national, and local levels. These three levels of dysfunctional aspect are closely linked with each other. The global dysfunctions, the threat of the Cold War, and the fear of the nuclear weapons were felt at the global level till the dismantling of the USSR. In the recent decades, the emergence of religious fundamentalism's increasing rate of unemployment. Slow growth of economy, manifestation of global terrorists have been the prominent global challenges. In a globalized world, it is very difficult to assure that social problems are confined to the national boundaries. However, there are certain problems which are specific to certain nations predominantly. In this context, we may pinpoint some of the dysfunctions and problems which are visible in India at the national level. The religion as an institution is supposed to spread brotherhood and amity among the human beings. Unfortunately, in India, religious divisions have led to the dysfunctional aspects of communalism. Consequently, it has become a victim of religious fundamentalisms and terrorisms. The local dysfunctions, there are certain dysfunctional conditions of Indian society confined to certain localities, regions and the state. The moot question is how and why such dysfunctional conditions emerge in society. The different societies have their specific contextual problems. The dysfunctions in the society are closely linked with the socio-economic and political transformation. The Western industries capitalist societies which receive their ideological support for the functional theory are facing the challenge of the rising curves of crimes, delinquency, alcoholism, loneliness, sex offenses, mental breakdowns, increasing rate of divorce and economic inequality. The paradigms of transformation in social problems. In this process, there were shifts in India and replacement of one ideology by the other. In modern terminology, it may be regarded as paradigm shifts or in the place of old paradigms, the emergence of new paradigms of development. We can divide these paradigms of transformation and development in the following categories: liberal capitalisms, communistic, democratic, socialist and Indian experiments, and the Gandhian paradigm. The liberal capitalist paradigm. The major emphasis of this paradigm was on democracy, political freedom, free enterprise, industrialization, modern technology and mass production. The social, economic and political consequences of the application of these ideas were democratic states, large-scale industrialization, migration from villages to cities. The democratic capitalist societies have succeeded in providing a minimum standard of living to their citizens and a good deal of political freedom, and at the same time the development in industrialized societies are suffering from crime, white collar criminality, fear of war, juvenile delinquency, anomie, mental health program, discrimination based on race in growing apathy. They have not succeeded in solving the problem of poverty and gender discrimination. The communist paradigms. The ideology of communists is opposed to the ideology of capitalism. Its major emphasis is on collectivity, control over the means of production by the communist states, dictatorship of the proletariats, and the utilization of the means of production and resources for benefit of the working class. The paradigms of the democratic socialisms, they thought that the capitalisms and communisms were equally incapable of meeting the challenges posed by the industrial Technological revolution, capitalism cannot provide economic freedom and communistic cannot offer political freedom. Both systems equally degrade human dignity, and the new society can be created only when men are free from social, economic, and political inequalities. The Indian experiments in Gandhian paradigms. In the ideal Gandhian paradigms of social transformation, there is little scope for the state since it represents brute force. The Gandhian paradigms plans to make a society based on the decentralization of power and economy, self-sufficient village community, and a moral order rooted in truth and non-violence. India adopted the path of social and economic transformation with emphasis on community development, removal of poverty, planned agricultural and industrial development, protective discrimination in favor of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, and the upliftment of the socially and educationally backward classes. Now, limitation of state interventions. The process has passed through the following two phases. First, the policy of laissez-faire, that means the major concerns of the state should be only the enforcement of law and order, and the state should not involve itself with welfare measures to protect the interest of its citizens. Every person understands his or her own interest. The collectivist ideologies, the state is the more powerful institution and undoubtedly its roles are very significant in controlling violence, communalism, social discrimination, and in promoting social securities and welfare. Limitations. The policy of laissez-faire has been discarded even by the capitalist states. There are limitations of the state interventions. The social problems can be more effectively checked by social consequences. State of participation on the part of citizens, the sense of responsibility on the part of the public. The efforts of state will not be effective unless welfare measures are accepted by society. Thus, we have to keep in mind that the measures initiated by states have their limits. Society and states combined together can effectively sort out challenges posed by pathological conditions. Now, there are some questions on the basis of this session. First one is, describe the major inadequacies of the functional and the Marxist approach, and second is, what is the meaning of paradigms? That's it for this session. Thank you. Happy learning, relearning.